Welcome to our channel. Enjoy the video.
September 1934. The city of Cleveland was waking to another ordinary morning. Smoke rose from factory chimneys, trains thundered through the industrial district, and thousands of people searched desperately for work as the Great Depression tightened its grip on America. But hidden beneath the bridges and railroad tracks of a place called Kingsbury Run, another world existed. It was a maze of makeshift shacks built from scrap wood, rusted metal, and old tarps. Homeless men and women, many forgotten by society, called it home. Poverty was everywhere, and survival often depended on finding enough food to last another day. Few people outside Kingsbury Run paid much attention to those living there. That would soon change. Because somewhere in the shadows, someone had begun hunting the city's most vulnerable people. And no one realized that Cleveland was about to become the hunting ground of one of America's most terrifying unidentified serial killers. On September 23, 1935, two teenage boys were exploring the area near Jackass Hill, a rough stretch overlooking Kingsbury Run. They expected to find nothing more than discarded junk. Instead, they stumbled upon something wrapped in brush. As they moved closer, they froze. Lying on the ground was the body of a man. He had been decapitated. His head was nowhere to be found. The body showed signs of deliberate mutilation. The killer hadn't simply murdered the victim. They had carefully dismembered him. Investigators quickly realized this wasn't a crime committed in panic or rage. Whoever had done this appeared calm, methodical, and frighteningly skilled. The victim was never positively identified. Police referred to him only as the unknown white male. For weeks, detectives searched for answers, but there were almost none. No witnesses. No murder weapon. No obvious suspect. The case slowly faded from the headlines. Until another body appeared. Less than a month later, another victim was discovered. This time, it was a woman. Like the first victim, she had been decapitated. Like the first victim, parts of her body had been carefully removed. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Detectives could no longer dismiss the murders as isolated crimes. Someone was repeating the same horrifying pattern. Fear began spreading across Cleveland. Rumors circulated that a madman was stalking the city's poorest neighborhoods, choosing victims who might never be reported missing. Many of the victims were drifters, laborers, or homeless individuals whose names were unknown even to police. Their disappearances often went unnoticed until their mutilated remains were found days or weeks later. This made the investigation incredibly difficult. Without identities, detectives couldn't reconstruct the victims' final movements. Without witnesses, every lead ended in silence. Yet one detail disturbed investigators more than anything else. Medical examiners concluded that the killer demonstrated an unusual knowledge of human anatomy. The precision of the cut suggested experience with surgical instruments or butchering techniques. Whether the murderer was a doctor, a butcher, or simply someone with extensive anatomical knowledge remained unknown. But one thing became increasingly clear. This killer wasn't improvising. Every crime appeared carefully planned. Every body seemed deliberately displayed. Every discovery felt like a message. As newspapers began reporting the gruesome details, Cleveland residents grew increasingly terrified. Parents warned their children to stay indoors after dark. Workers avoided isolated streets. Even seasoned police officers admitted privately that they had never encountered crimes so horrifying. Then investigators made an even more chilling realization. The victims weren't chosen at random. The killers seemed to understand exactly who could disappear without causing immediate alarm. People living on society's margins. People with no one searching for them. People the city had forgotten. And while detectives struggled to piece together the mystery, the murderer remained completely invisible. No fingerprints. No eyewitnesses. No clear motive. Only silence. As autumn turned toward winter, Cleveland hoped the nightmare had ended. Instead, the killings were only beginning. The city had not yet met the man newspapers would soon call the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run. And before the investigation reached its peak, even one of America's most famous lawmen would find himself drawn into the hunt. By early 1936, Cleveland was holding its breath. Detectives hoped the horrifying murders had ended with the arrival of winter. Weeks had passed without another body, and many residents convinced themselves that the nightmare was finally over. They were wrong. On a cold February morning, workers near Kingsbury Run made another gruesome discovery. A woman's body lay discarded in the snow. Her head had been severed. Parts of her body had been carefully dismembered. Just like the earlier victims. The pattern was unmistakable. The killer had returned. Only this time, the murders came faster. Over the following months, more victims were found scattered across Cleveland. Some bodies were discovered along railroad tracks. Others appeared in vacant lots, riverbanks, and isolated patches of woodland. In several cases, the remains had been cleaned or drained of blood before being abandoned, suggesting the murders had taken place somewhere else. The precision shocked investigators. Medical examiners concluded that many of the cuts were deliberate and controlled. The killer seemed comfortable working with the human body, leading to endless speculation. Was the murderer a doctor? A butcher? A medical student? Or simply someone who had learned anatomy through experience? No one knew. As the number of victims climbed, Cleveland's newspapers gave the unknown murderer a name that would terrify the city for decades. The Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run. Every new headline deepened the panic. Residents locked their doors earlier than ever before. People avoided walking alone after sunset. Parents warned their children never to wander near Kingsbury Run or the river. Rumors spread faster than facts. Some believed there were multiple killers. Others whispered that the murderer worked in a hospital. Some even claimed the killer was targeting anyone who crossed his path. But detectives noticed something different. Most victims lived on society's margins. People struggling through the Great Depression, many without permanent homes or close family. Their disappearances often went unnoticed until their remains were found, giving the killer precious time to erase evidence. The investigation grew larger with every murder. Police officers questioned hundreds of witnesses. Doctors, slaughterhouse employees, railroad workers, and transients were all interviewed. Every promising lead collapsed under scrutiny. There were no reliable eyewitnesses. No murder weapon. No crime scene that could reveal where the killings had actually taken place. The city demanded answers. Newspapers criticized law enforcement almost daily, accusing officials of failing to stop a monster who seemed capable of killing whenever he wished. The pressure reached City Hall. That's when officials turned to one of the most famous lawmen in America. Eliot Ness had already earned national recognition for helping bring down organized crime during Prohibition. Now serving as Cleveland's safety director, he found himself facing an entirely different kind of enemy. This wasn't a gangster who could be tracked through money or informants. This was a predator who left behind almost nothing. Ness reorganized the investigation, assigning additional detectives and coordinating information that had previously been scattered across multiple departments. Every victim was re-examined. Every report was reviewed. Officers began searching for connections that earlier investigators might have missed. But despite the increased effort, the killer remained invisible. Then came another horrifying twist. In one case, portions of human remains were discovered within sight of public buildings, almost as if the murderer wanted investigators to find them. Some detectives believed the placement was intentional, a chilling display of confidence, perhaps even a challenge to the authorities. If that theory was true, the Mad Butcher wasn't hiding in fear. He was taunting the police. Public confidence began to collapse. Editorials questioned whether anyone in Cleveland was safe. The murders had become more than a criminal investigation. They had become a test of whether the city itself could protect its people. For Eliot Ness, failure was becoming impossible to ignore. Somewhere in Cleveland, the killer was still walking free. And Ness was about to make the most controversial decision of his career, a desperate gamble that remains debated nearly a century later. By the summer of 1938, Cleveland had become a city haunted by fear. Years had passed since the first mutilated body was discovered, yet the killer remained untouched. Every investigation, every search, and every promising lead had ended the same way, with silence. For Eliot Ness, the pressure was unbearable. Once celebrated as the man who helped bring down some of America's most notorious criminals, Ness now faced an enemy unlike any he had encountered before. The Mad Butcher left no clear trail. No fingerprints. No eyewitnesses. No weapon. Only victims. With public confidence collapsing, Ness decided that conventional police work wasn't enough. He believed the killer was hiding among the transient population living in Kingsbury Run, a sprawling settlement of makeshift shelters beneath Cleveland's bridges and railroad tracks. If the murderer was blending into that community, Ness reasoned, removing the hiding place might force him into the open. On August 18, 1938, police officers, firefighters, and city workers entered Kingsbury Run. Residents were ordered to leave. Shacks built from scrap wood and metal were searched one by one. Anyone without identification was questioned. Then the settlement was set on fire. Flames quickly spread through the maze of shelters. Dark smoke rose over Cleveland as hundreds of people watched their homes disappear. To some, it looked like decisive action. To others, it was a devastating blow against people who had already lost almost everything. The operation dominated newspaper headlines. But there was one question no one could answer. Had it accomplished anything? Officially, no evidence directly connected any resident of Kingsbury Run to the murders. The killer had vanished once again. Behind the scenes, however, investigators continued pursuing several suspects. One man stood out more than the others. A well-educated doctor with a troubled personal history reportedly drew the attention of investigators because of his medical knowledge and unusual behavior. According to later accounts, he underwent questioning and even periods of surveillance. Some officers believed he fit the psychological profile of the killer. Yet belief wasn't proof. There was no physical evidence linking him to the murders. No eyewitness placed him with any victim. No confession was ever obtained. Without enough evidence to prosecute, the investigation reached another dead end. Other suspects surfaced over the years: a butcher, a railroad worker, even drifters who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Each theory attracted attention before eventually collapsing under scrutiny. The deeper detectives looked, the more frustrating the case became. Every clue seemed to raise two new questions. Then something unexpected happened. The murders appeared to stop. No new series of torso killings emerged that investigators could confidently attribute to the Mad Butcher. Was the killer dead? Had he left Cleveland? Was he imprisoned for another crime? Or had he simply decided to stop? No one knew. For Eliot Ness, the silence brought little comfort. The public expected an arrest. Instead, the city's most terrifying serial killer had seemingly disappeared without a trace. Critics argued that burning Kingsbury Run had failed to solve the case while destroying the homes of innocent people. Supporters insisted Ness had done everything possible with the limited forensic tools of the 1930s. Nearly a century later, historians still debate whether his controversial decision was an act of desperation, or a mistake born from impossible circumstances. But perhaps the most unsettling question remained unanswered. If the killings had truly ended, why? Because in unsolved serial murder cases, silence doesn't always mean justice. Sometimes it simply means the killer is no longer choosing to kill. And that haunting possibility would ensure the mystery of the Cleveland torso killer lived on long after the investigation itself had faded into history. Nearly 90 years have passed since the last suspected victim of the Cleveland torso killer was found. The crime scenes have long disappeared. The witnesses are gone. Most of the investigators have passed into history. Yet one question refuses to die. Who was the mad butcher of Kingsbury Run? When the murders suddenly stopped in 1938, many believed the nightmare was finally over. There was no dramatic arrest, no courtroom confession, and no moment of justice for the victims' families. Instead, the silence itself became part of the mystery. Over the decades, countless theories have emerged. Some historians believe the killer died shortly after the murders ended, taking his identity to the grave. Others argue that he simply left Cleveland, blending into another city where his crimes either continued unnoticed or stopped altogether. One of the most discussed theories centers on a doctor who attracted the attention of investigators during the original case. His medical background seemed consistent with the precision of the mutilations, and his behavior reportedly raised concerns among those investigating the murders. But suspicion is not proof. Despite years of speculation, no conclusive evidence ever linked him to the killings. No forensic evidence, no eyewitness testimony, and no verified confession established his guilt. In fact, every major suspect shared the same problem. There simply wasn't enough evidence. Today, modern forensic science has solved countless cold cases using DNA, fingerprint databases, and advanced investigative techniques. Unfortunately, much of the physical evidence from the Cleveland torso case was either lost, destroyed, or degraded over time. Crime scenes from the 1930s were processed using methods that would be considered primitive by today's standards, making a modern resolution extremely difficult. The victims themselves remain a heartbreaking part of the story. Several were never conclusively identified. They entered history as Jane Doe or John Doe, remembered more for the brutality of their deaths than for the lives they lived. For many true crime historians, that is the greatest tragedy of all. The Cleveland torso killer didn't just steal lives. He stole identities. He turned human beings into unsolved case files. Yet the investigation changed American policing in important ways. The case exposed the limits of forensic science during the 1930s and highlighted the challenges of identifying victims from marginalized communities. It also demonstrated how serial murder investigations could overwhelm even experienced law enforcement agencies when evidence was scarce. To this day, criminologists continue to study the case, searching old records, photographs, and witness statements for overlooked clues. Every few years, a new theory gains attention. A forgotten suspect. A newly discovered document. A different interpretation of old evidence. But each promising lead eventually reaches the same conclusion. There is no definitive answer. And perhaps there never will be. The Cleveland torso killer remains one of America's oldest and most disturbing unsolved serial murder mysteries, a case where the murderer may have escaped justice simply because the science of the era could not keep pace with the crimes. Imagine living in Cleveland during those years. Every newspaper brought news of another body. Every rumor pointed to another suspect. Every passing stranger became a source of fear. And somewhere, hidden among millions of ordinary people, the killer may have been reading those same headlines, knowing the police still had no idea who he was. That possibility is what makes this case endure. Not because we know how it ended, but because we don't. The Mad Butcher vanished from history as suddenly as he appeared, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions that has haunted investigators for generations. Perhaps the truth is buried in a forgotten file. Perhaps it was lost forever with the people who kept its secrets. Or perhaps the identity of the Cleveland torso killer is a mystery that will never be solved. And sometimes, the most terrifying stories are the ones with...
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss our next video. See you in the next one.